Hi there. Monday on Astral Oracles. We're going to check in with Guan Yin, and she's going to talk about dreams. I'm channeling this on November 8th, 2022. There is a full moon taking place outside. It's in the evening, and I believe there's also a lunar eclipse on its way. So the energies are very, very intense, and the veil is rather thin. And relating to that, the other day I had the pleasure of doing a session where Isis came through for us and explained a lot about dreams and hypnotic states. And what she explained was that in early childhood you'll find that your aura or your energy body, it's not quite boundaried or limited. And that often then expresses itself in so-called dark entities or some of these parasitical entities that also exist in the ethers will come in and then create night terrors or nightmares, extracting energy from the child. And children are kind of, very strong, small energy factories. And then as the energy body shapes and you grow older, what happens, she explained, was that then usually the dreams will take more a character, they will take on a character where it has more to do with the shaping of the personality. And as you move into adulthood, you'll get more into these kind of dream states that can seem almost quite mundane, where it's really a lot about processing the events of the day or whatever's going on in your life. But what she then explained is that when you move into these more liminal spaces, these crisis experiences where you kind of feel like your identity is changing and things are hard and oh, what are you gonna do? Then there is actually a kind of dissolution of the boundary of the energy body again. And this means that you will begin to have dream experiences that are more akin to what is happening in childhood. And I think probably everybody has had this experience of night terrors. I remember at least one time, I think it was in 2018 or something for me, where you wake up and feel paralyzed, and there's some kind of unpleasant, ugly entity floating at the end of your bed, and you can't really move or do anything. And that's very much akin to sort of the parasitical absorption that some of these entities will undertake um, with human children. So I think it would be interesting to get like sweet, compassionate protectress Guan Yin to give some advice on it. And then also, it speaks to my personal situation. I've been having some very weird dreams recently. Partially, I quit THC about a month ago or something, so that would explain it. Another factor I'm suspecting is that I've been eating a lot of cheese because I'm in Italy, and uh, and cheese or fermented foods contain a lot of tyramine. Tyramine is exactly the thing that you're asked to avoid if you ingest MAO inhibitors. That is one of the components of ayahuasca, because then your body won't break it down and it has some effects on blood pressure. But I also seem to remember that there is some modern folklore about the idea that you shouldn't eat like salami pizzas before you go to sleep, and that essentially would be the same chemical component. It's watch out for the tyramine because it affects your dreams in weird and often slightly nightmarish ways. So without further ado, I'll simply check in with Guan Yin, see what she will do to this message and what she has to say. And then, if you're watching it in real time, the unicorns will join us in 3 days. So please be there if you feel like it. Much love, guys. I bring you love and compassion from eternity We are hovering, watching you. I, Guan Yin, one of my many names, I extend my deepest love to you this day. I assure you that whatever you are experiencing, whatever storms you may feel that you are in the middle of, whatever energies may be hurling and whirling about you, you are protected in the eye of the hurricane. You may feel much as one of these prayer wheels that when you are not spinning, you are not releasing your karma properly. The karma is the accumulation of unwanted energies that sit in this transitory space, exactly in the boundary space between the physical and the emotional. Notice therefore how we could call it emotional wreckage. These things, experiences, pains that you accumulate, that they have a tendency to store themselves in your body. That is, they feed back into this lower level of reality. When I call it lower, it is simply because it is the basis of who you are that is shaped down here. And much as the ground is the basis of those upper levels of your body, that is, you couldn't really be anything if you didn't have something to walk on, then the physical is also the basis of the infinite we that makes up the divine mind of the all. I come as a guiding part of that mind. I come as an expression, an incarnation of humanity that has freed itself from the influence of these stuck energies, and thereby I sit outside the wheel of time. But another way to understand this is that because my substance is of true compassion, it is always tuning into the exact movement of where things are moving. The quality of change is something that I completely embody and let pass through my being, and therefore there is no resistance that results in this stuck karma. There is no buildup of physical density, and therefore there is no need for me to reincarnate anymore. There is no buildup of emotional wreckage, and therefore there is no need for me to feel the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of the human emotional states that often seem so upsetting and difficult to handle and heal for the individual human being. I move with the astrological energies, with the cosmological energies, with the energies of the multiverse. I am ever changing, and therefore, as I completely align with this change, I remain the same. This is a deep paradox that you can begin to express in your life by practicing the practice of radical acceptance. It is then this idea that it is not the strong energies that move through you that hinder your happy, joyous experience, your alignment with the true celebratory nature of reality. It is your interpretation of these things. It is your latching on. It is the setting up of barriers or the belief that these barriers are real that create the trouble rather than it is trouble itself finding you. My dearest friend here who lends his voice, his body to this message this day, is then asking me, well, dear Guan Yin, how does that relate to dreams? You may know, some of you at least, that there is to our mind no real difference between the dreaming state that you call being awake, that is the state where you walk about in your physical environment, where you have experiences, where you feel steady in who you are, where you don't expect the miraculous, the surprising, or the downright weird to come and upset you in the middle of something. But there is no difference between this ordinary waking state and then the nighttime state of sleep, from the perspective where I am sitting and where those beings that guide you through the wheel of time, they are sitting. So in the language of the angels, we could say that you are all dreaming constantly, that you are all simply allowing for different speeds of reality change in these different states. But you could essentially transfer the codes of reality to the dream state. That is, you could make nighttime into day by having boring and mundane dreams, and you could turn daytime into night by dreaming boundaryless, expansive visions of yourself in the daytime. What really makes the difference here is rather that what you call your outside environment is being outlined in the daytime. The daytime is, as more electromagnetic light floods in, that is the thing that you simply, the radiation from your sun, you will see that it also begins to define things, because it has a much stronger way of breaking down energy in its nature. It is constantly shining on things, either taking them apart or prodding them to create organic codes of development that can resist this taking apart, that can interact with the light in new ways. This is what is happening with the sun. And therefore, you will find that your daytime dream, the thing you usually call reality, it seeks to naturally do the thing which plants also do, that is to create a type of resistance against this breakdown, this enormous evaporation of figures that take place. This is also the reason that so many deep religious visions have been had by luminaries in your deserts, exactly where the sun becomes so intense that it dissolves everything into a singular, non differentiated vision of light that is very akin to the divine as it exists in this ever present, all now moment, radiating from its pure source and from all centers into their surroundings, this deep emanation and joyous play of light. But what then happens in the nighttime is that you will find the outlines are not as pertinent. They are not necessarily there anymore. And so your mental process can do the natural thing, which is it can begin to dissolve then its inner boundaries. These inner boundaried states become intertwined and meshed, and therefore you will see that your conception of reality, when you are in a dream state, in a nighttime dream, is exactly expressed by many spaces intertwining and existing simultaneously, by people having several overlapping personalities at once, by things being very multiplicitous in their expression containing much complexity. This is the allowance of the night. This is very akin to the practice of magic. You will find here that what you are doing is that you are allowing one level of the self to be placed upon another level of experience. And by the merging of these two, you find that you can release some of these boundaries. You can create new and more helpful visions of what is going on in your experience. But you will also find that this is informed exactly by what we call karma in this context. That is the stuck energetic patterns that are moving through you, or exactly not moving through you, but that are trying to pressure themselves through your conscious body. There is this push of things that want to be integrated, that want to be placed into a whole, a structure. But because they are stuck and they are separate, you will find that they will often be very, very difficult to handle. Therefore, they are usually better expressed, better processed in a state that calls for boundaryless vision of the nighttime vision. This is often the space where they can be expressed. Now then, there are certain chemical agents, you could call it that, certain frequency adjusters or vibrators that you will find in your outer experience. This was what then our friend here, the dear one, was expressing about, for instance, the molecule known as THC. That is, this component has the quality of dissolving the boundaries of experience. Therefore, you will also find that it often creates a greater state of, let's call it, emotional receptivity, that there is simply a more porous boundary between the physical and the emotional when you find yourself under the influence of this chemical. Therefore, it becomes much easier for consciousness to run its free-flowing game, that is, to do this boundary dissolution within the waking daytime state. There, we could say there is a different component. Notice that one is connected to the plant realm, the other is connected more to, let's say, the realm of conservation. That is, how do you process things that are essentially dead into something that can still sustain you? Well, you do this by different interesting methods of preservation that you have developed. It is essentially household chemistry. But you will notice that there's this frequency of death. It is expressed in the tyramine. The tyramine, then, this molecule, is something that agitates the body to a degree where it is more inclined to set up these boundaries. And so you will find that there is a type of, if not perfect storm, there is a type of symbiosis here between this cessation of the experience, this deep idea that there is. And we sense our friend is becoming distracted by a sound at the door, but we will assure him that it is not a problem. We will instead recapitulate this point, this idea that you will find when you move away from the influence of one boundary dissolving unit, and you are also then ingesting more of another boundary setting unit. that as this is processed in your physical body, this will begin to then limit off what can flow in from the emotional body. And so rather than these deep, let's call them visionary dreams, you will experience something that is more receptive to the processing of stuck material and even to the repeat of stuck material that is personal codes within the nighttime dream state. Our encouragement, if you want to avoid this, is not only to partially treat both your inner and outer world with a sense of love and compassion, understanding that it is allowed, it is safe, it is supported in its willingness to remove boundaries. And therefore, you are always moving towards a state of greater flow, a more divine alignment, we could say, when you allow yourself to interact with things that do not generate resistance and that do not, say, disintegrate your own self. So there is a type of balancing in the act of compassion. Then we would also encourage all of you to align with the natural flows of energies. And that is again the practice of radical acceptance. It is through the acceptance of the experience, which is in and of itself a divine, a loving practice. It is seeing that what you are holding and be holding is always something that is fitting itself into the all by being focused in your experience in this moment. And so, even when you find that you are a limited being dealing with things, what you are doing is that you are fitting these limitations into a divine play of parts. And that, when it is accepted, gives way to joy, exuberance, wonder, these states of love that you find. There you will also notice that these parasitical entities our friend mentioned, they do not hold any particular sway except for the parts that are limited. And it is exactly by exacerbating, amplifying these limitation codes that they keep you stuck. So the description of sleep paralysis, for instance, is indeed this phenomenon where your psyche is meant to make real the state of physical paralysis. So it is a clear sign that you are not necessarily allowing for the flow between these states, for the integrations of these states. And as soon as you recognize that there is a separation that is at play within you, only supported by you, you will notice that these certain influences, they can no longer connect to you. Instead, you are becoming an integrated whole, and within the integrated whole, you can only be matched by things of the same level of integration. Therefore, do enjoy this full and complete cycle of the moon, this whole emanation of the moon disk, and the light it bathes you in, and the many visions and wonders releases that are being offered to you through the healing mystical effects of the moonlight. I, Guan Yin, being with you always, but in this moment speaking to you, I extend in words my deepest love and compassion, my care for humanity in this moment and in all moments, in love, in harmony, in peace. Farewell. Very complex message. I sense I'll have to go over that a few times, I think, but I do hope that it served you, and if nothing else, I really enjoyed working with her energy. So much love to you out there.